Hello, I am here to talk about the book that I read from my book talk called From the Mix-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. I first heard about this book in 4th or 5th grade when a teacher did it as in read aloud. Every day we had reading time and we either could join for the read aloud or read on our own, and this was one of the books that she selected. And the same year that she read it, I was able to take a trip to New York with my family and we visited the Met, and it was really cool to get to, put the connection from the book that we read in my class to real life. I get to go see the same entryway and the people and the different pieces that they talk about in the book. I actually forgot about this book until I found it last year in the used book section at my local library, and I was really excited to get to add it to my own collection. And I decided to reread it because I couldn't remember anything about it other than I really, really liked it. So I was not an avid reader until about 1.5 years ago when I decided to become a teacher, and I thought in order to be an English teacher, it's important that I have, a fund of books that I can call upon when I want to do different instructional pieces and just, enough novels and texts that I could apply to my own instruction and curriculum one day. So, without further ado, more about this book. The author is E.L. Königsberg. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. I should have practiced that before we started this. But prior to doing this project, I didn't know much about her at all. It turns out that her family lived in New York and they would travel to the city every single weekend. She was a stay-at-home mom to 3 children who were about the same age as the 2 main characters of the novel. And every weekend she would go to the city to take an art class, and she would drop her kids off at the museum, and they would, roam around, see the inside. And one of her sons says that the only things that he wanted to make sure he did while they visited was see the coat of arms, all the knights, all the different garb, and see the mummy. Other than that, it just did not matter to him. And actually, she includes that in this book. So it's really interesting that at the same time that she was writing this, she had school-aged children that were the same age as the 2 main characters. And her son talks about how when they would go to school, their mom would stay home and write. And when they would come home for lunch, she would read whatever she had written to them. And if they laughed and they enjoyed it, she would keep it. And if they didn't laugh, she would scrap it. So I think it's really special that she had her own focus group at the time that she could test out her material on, see, if kids would like it. So it's really special that this was written for kids and essentially by kids. If your parent was at home every day writing and she tested her material on you, you had so much input on the piece, her final piece, what she made. So I think that's something that's really important about this piece and why we could incorporate it into our classrooms, because I think it's an attractive novel for young students that are curious about the world around us, curious about exploration, and, they've always wanted to go on an adventure. So this book is written in the perspective from Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. She is writing a letter to her lawyer, Saxonburg, and she tells the story of Claudia and Jamie, 2 kids that live in Greenwich Village, which, by the way, I believe is the same location as where the apartments for Friends would have been. So, kind of cool. Anyways, it takes place in the 60s, and they decide that they are going to run away while their parents are their parents believe they're at school. So they're going to run away. They pack up all their things and they decide they're going to run away to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Claudia devises this plan and she takes her younger brother Jamie essentially for funds. His entire role during this trip is treasurer, and he's very uptight about his money. So Claudia is the one that she's looking to change. She wants this to be a constructive adventure where she develops as a person and she gets to seek a greater sense of the world around her. And so they collect their things and they save up their allowances, and they decided that they're going to run away to live into the Metropolitan Museum of Art. While they're staying there, a new piece is entered into the exhibits, and it's a mystery as to who made it. It's a sculpture, and this sculpture is believed to be an early piece of Michelangelo, and no one knows, and there's no telltale signs. People are coming to examine it and see if it's a Michelangelo, but no one except for Mrs. Basil Frankweiler knows who it is, and she comes into this novel because she was the previous owner of the sculpture before the museum purchased it from her. While Jamie and Claudia are staying at the museum, they take it upon themselves to figure out the mystery. Is this a Michelangelo or not? And the author actually had the inspiration for this piece because when she would drop her kids off at the museum, there was a new piece that was rumored to be an early Da Vinci. So that's where her inspiration for that piece came from. And this is the selection from the book that I would like to read to you. At this point, Jamie and Claudia have just gotten to the museum, and they are getting familiar with the area around them, the people, the traffic, the day-to-day, what happens at the museum. They're picking out currently a place to sleep. And there's a picture. There's this beautiful Victorian style bed, regal. So here it is. They wandered back to the room of fine French and English furniture. It was here Claudia knew for sure that she had chosen the most elegant place in the world to hide. She wanted to sit on the lounge chair that had been made for Marie Antoinette, or at least sit at her writing table. But signs everywhere said not to step on the platform, and some of the chairs had silken ropes strung across the arms to keep you from even trying to sit down. She would have to wait until after lights out to be Marie Antoinette. At last, she found a bed that she considered perfectly wonderful, and she told Jamie that they would spend the night there. The bed had a tall canopy, supported by an ornately carved headboard at one end and by 2 gigantic posts at the other. I'm familiar with that bed, Saxonberg. It is enormous and fussy as mine, and it dates from the 16th century like mine. I once considered donating my bed to the museum, but Mr. Untermeyer gave them this one first. I was somewhat relieved when he did. Now I can enjoy my bed without feeling guilty because the museum doesn't have one. Besides, I'm not that fond of donating things. So in that piece, we can see that Claudia is, she's just overwhelmed with the beauty of the museum and all the pieces around her. And we also get the tone from Mrs. Frankweiler as the narrator there. She's talking about their story as they're saying there in the letter. I would select this piece for students in 4th or 5th grade. I think that they would be really compelled to read this adventure of students their same age. Claudia is in 6th grade in the novel. So I think it would be interesting for them to get to explore the different pieces that they might not be familiar with, and how it connects to different places in the world that they might not know about. I don't think that many 4th or 5th graders in the Midwest might have ever been to New York City. They might have heard about the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but they don't know anything about it. So if students are looking for an adventure and something that they can relate to through kids their own age, this would definitely be the piece to introduce to them. My artifact that I have chosen to create is a collage of all the pieces that they talk about in the book. So in my collage in the middle, I have selected a piece of Michelangelo's Angel, the one that they the mystery is about in the novel, and surrounded by that is a quote from Claudia that says, I didn't come on this adventure to not change when I go home. So she really is looking for an intrinsic self-exploration adventure as she goes on this journey, and she wants to transform her being. She thinks that by traveling to New York, she'll become a new person, and I believe that this adventure really does complete that for her. So in my collage, there's pieces of different areas of the museum, places that they talk about, and a lot of the pieces have been removed since this was written in the 60s. So I think that that's a really interesting part about it. This is a part of history now that we aren't familiar with anymore. So definitely take the time to read the book. I hope you enjoy this, and thanks for listening.